You look well yourselves.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hard.
I'm very impressed by your setup there. It's amazing. I didn't realise it was quite on such a scale, really.
It's all, as you can tell, and it's pretty much inspired by zillions of wineries that I've visited. So that's our approach is a bit, thinking about the fruit and the processes in much the same way as a winemaker does. But we're not making wine, obviously, but we're...
No. But you got your tasting room and you got the shop and the potentially invite people in for doing events and...
Yeah. So everything's here. We're really lucky. The farm that we're on is amazing. So it's a stunning spot. So everything's set up apart from some pesky global pandemic.
Well, yes, that pesky. So why did you choose that area then? Why did you choose to be in that part of Herefordshire?
I mean, Herefordshire is like the left bank of Bordeaux for apple. Spot. So the trees grow really well here. And so also the community of cider making here is really strong. So we knew we'd have a bit of a support network if we moved here to do it. So that was it really.
Yeah, we did look all around. We kind of I got here, when I did that Drink Britain tourism stuff. Yeah. So I first got here because I was following up some of the breweries and then Westerns because of the tourism element. And then I got here and it was like, I've never tasted these things outside of here. These are really interesting. And it was the sort of bottles perhaps that we're making now or whatever. So at places like Tom Oliver and with Ross and then coming back. And then I think the next year, James and I, we had the typical busman's holiday. So, and we spent 2 weeks going around the country. And again, you had a bit of a epiphany here, didn't you? It was...
Yeah. I mean, I would never drink cider before. It never even occurred to me. Just drank wine on every day. But it was tasting some of the fruit from the trees when we were on that trip, and also tasting some stuff with some of the cider makers. And it's coming from a wine point of view. It can be a bit difficult to understand the flavors and how they're all working inside. So it took me a little bit of time, but once I got it, then especially when I tasted the fruit, that made sense. Then suddenly why these flavors emerged at the end of the process. So and I became quite intrigued by it. And it seemed to me that you have these amazing, intense pieces of fruit because of the raw material of cider. And how can these large commercial companies make stuff that is just so incredibly insipid and uninteresting from that basic fruit? So that was the kind of driving force.
So there's that kind of there's lots of similarities between grape growing, grape varieties, and all the various different apple varieties.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is some similarity, but chemically grapes and apples are similar, but there's some pretty fundamental differences that ensure that the end result is very, very different. So you can't quite apply winemaking to. You can actually, and that's what we started to do. We just we'll take grapefruit and we'll press it. Grapefruit, not grapefruit. We'll press it and we'll let it ferment until it's dry, and then we'll have something that tastes good. And that got us so far. That process works, but I think that you need to do a little bit more with cider to get to tease out all the flavors.
Right. So when you went on that 2-week sort of tour, was that with the intention of doing what you're doing now? Or was that just literally a kind of a part of your Drink Britain?
Yeah. It was a Drink Britain. So we kind of started with places like Thornbridge, so we went up to the Lake District to saw some key places there. But James, I don't think you'd really been here before. We definitely had a few days in Herefordshire, probably on the way down to, Somerset. But it kind of, after that, we kind of started thinking. And we'd met Simon Day of Once Upon a Tree, who also makes wine under 16 Ridges. So we met the good people then, didn't we?
We were super lucky.
And it kind of bubbled along. We looked for 2 years to find somewhere. James likens this to the left bank of Bordeaux. I liken it to Burgundy because there's lots of little plots, it's small places. On a vast expanse. But so it took us 2 years to find a little orchard that we could take on and move from Epsom, and a little house. And then that was 5 years ago, nearly.
That was 2014 when we bought the place.
That's it. Yeah.
So,
It's quite a brave step. I mean, obviously you hear people going off to all parts of the world to follow their dreams, opening chateaus and doing all that kind of thing. But you've headed to the depth of Herefordshire to make cider. It's quite a brave step to have made.
brave or stupid. Yeah. It was a brave step, but also we all think like with wines of Argentina and you championing English wines and stuff like that back in the day. We're kind of like the underdogs. Yeah. So there is a kind of logic to it. The cider is a definite underdog.
Yeah, the journalist hat, you know what it's like. You see something that is not known or underappreciated, and then you research it, and then you think it really isn't known. Or really, so there's something that you can do. So James I did the volunteering, in the autumn harvest. James has done the courses. So we kind of researched it, and it's great. There is a good community. It is going national. There is a community internationally. And to give you a little bit of perspective, the same thing is happening in the States of boutique cider makers making really good stuff that does get to good restaurants, from Michelin star to bistro, back to pubs. And so the same thing's happening there. The same thing is happening in Australia. Again, it's pockets.
Yeah.
But so, for example, in Australia, you know Max Allen, the writer.
Yeah.
So he's been making cider for 10 years.
Okay, all right.
He's just written about cider for Cider Australia.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
what we've lost here, because people like the Bulmer brothers were so good at making the refreshment style cider, that kind of took over. So the Bulmer brothers, late 19th century cider, and they were able to make it consistently. So then people did want it. They're complete philanthropists. You really won't find someone in this region who's maybe our age or older or whatever, has a bad word to say, because it's so important. Yeah. But then it just kind of got a bit lost. So here in the UK, to be called... No, I'm just talking about here in the UK, cider, it only has to have 35% fruit, 35% apples. In France, well, in the USA, it's 50%. In certain places of France, certainly in Brittany, 100% fruit. So you can see
differences.
Yeah. We've kind of lost.
Yourself, or what do you try and do? What's your...
Well, we're pressing fruit and fermenting it, so we're not. We've I think if you wanted to make an analogy, we'd be like a natural wine producer, so we're very low in intervention, and we just let the fruit do the work for us. Fruit and time, basically.
Yeah, and I guess we were talking earlier about the actual sourcing of the fruit as well. I mean, are you getting all your fruit from the orchard where you are, or are you buying in fruit from other places?
It's a mixture of things, yeah. So we have our own orchards that we pick from, and then we buy in fruit, but we also pick fruit from other orchards that are around us. And there's a load of old historic orchards around us. So
and is it like blending? The idea when you hear winemakers talking about adding a little bit of Sanso or adding a little bit of Grenache for flavour or texture, is it similar with the apples? You get to know the variety that can.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I think it's even more important in apples, because there's very few apples that have the complexity in and of themselves to make a single varietal. So there are a few, but it's much more about blending to create something that's good within the summer.
The Pomona cider you sent me last week, the table cider, with the fact you had the 5 varieties in there, which none of which I'd ever actually heard of. To have to be said, but I was fascinated to find there were 5 cider. And it was great also to taste something whereby you're championing the 5 varieties rather than it just being you know, in one point on the back label, it's very kind of like upfront, and you know, so you know that when you're tasting it.
Exactly. So we set out at the beginning to champion the apple. I mean, that was a simple thing for us because it's been done so well in wine that it's you know, that's the point of difference that we had. And now there are quite a few other producers who are doing exactly the same. So
I'm going to do a little bit of self-publicity. So my book, and
well done, Susanna.
I know.
Yeah, very done, yes.
I know. I've been watching people do that. It's very, but again, I just wrote. I got hold of the apple names, and it is funny because not everyone does it, but getting better now, aren't they?
Yeah, no, it is important. I mean, not everybody cares. Really. Probably not everyone cares what's in most wines on the supermarket.
But yourself, I guess your wines, your ciders, your target market. I mean, who is your target market for your ciders? Is there a community out there growing of people who are looking for this kind of ciders, or is it more
I think
the right outlets they can then promote them?
I think there is the cider geeks who like our stuff, but then there's also an element of people who enjoy craft beers. So particularly if they enjoy sour beers or that kind of style of stuff, and that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And also then you have experimental wine drinkers or natural wine drinkers. And just anyone who's interested in flavour
anyone
or
who's
provenance.
Interested in flavour.
Is a
Local.
potential.
We've had so many people who've said to us, "Oh, I don't like dry cider," and then you give them our cider, and our ciders are dry because technically we ferment through to dryness. That's the difference. One of the difference between apples and grapes. Grapes, there's some residual sugar. Apples will naturally ferment to dryness, but because the thing is so fruity, it's not perceived as being dry. So. Honestly, it's like a wake-up moment for a lot of people, which is really lovely.
Yeah, it's cool.
And like you say, you have got that kind of food aspect to it. You know, I mean, the little Paloma. I mean, you could quite happily sit and have that as your main.
Yeah.
Or an alternative to wine for dinner, as it were.
No, I've often said these sort of ciders that we make and others make would be great lunchtime drinks when we're back to normal, you know, because you and I could share a bottle of that cider we sent you and go away and work quite happily because the alcohol is naturally half of what it is in wine.
Yeah.
And do you see kind of many of the new sort of natural wine bars, the places that are selling more of those sort of low intervention wines as being kind of ideal outlets for yourselves, for your ciders, really? Yeah,
absolutely. And people who are into those sort of products just naturally get cider. It just makes sense to them if it's made into those sort of principles.
We're also, though, it's really great. Some of the local great restaurants. So Penson's is the only Michelin star in Herefordshire and probably Shropshire now, I think. And so we're on the menu there, and we were on the tasting menu. And the front of house manager, Jim, he's been here and he's seen us and he's helped us for a day. And so
I mean, they're very supportive of local producers, and they source all of their ingredients for as far as is possible from very close to the restaurants.
And I guess, I mean, you know, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I mean, there's been a massive boom in English sparkling wine and English wineries. I mean, hundreds of English wineries now. So in a way, it's quite hard for an English winery to sort of stand out and be genuinely different. But I guess, is it with someone like yourselves, there's a bit more opportunity to actually be different and to stand out and give a bit more of a unique approach to things? Or
I think it's still, you still have to each time hand sell the initial proposition, but there's more opportunities, and that's really lovely. So that, as James says, the natural wine sort of community, they've been extremely welcoming, as has the craft beer community. So for example, Manchester, two particular advocates have just done an amazing job of interesting people. And the point is, they've done it the traditional sort of foot leather way. Oh, I see you're interested. Shall I bring in some ciders and have a taste? And they've done that around a number of pubs, bars, restaurants. And Manchester is now alive with excitement about good cider. So what it does is it offers places an opportunity. And now people are asking. It's really lovely. Blair was in Birmingham over the weekend, and he went to one place, and the guy said, "Oh, people are asking for your stuff. Great, you know." So,
all right.
And it's
so,
amazing.
do you have a distributor, or do you do it yourself? How do you get the wines, the ciders?
I mean, we do locally. We distribute ourselves, but we have the Fine Cider Company in London who does a lot of our stuff, and then we have another company in Scotland called Restock, run by Grant Hutchison, and he does sort of north of the country for us. So, I mean, we don't make that much stuff, and everything we make it seems to sell out really quickly thanks to these guys and the support.
But also, you know, you're having to. You were talking earlier about having to like age. It's not just a case of like, you know, it must be. You know, again, it's the lack, or to be more aware of these things. But I wasn't aware that you were like the need to age cider for a couple of years before you.
Yeah, I mean, if you unpack that toolkit of modern cider making and throw it all away, then you're left with apples and time. And because cider apples tend to have tannins, those tannins take a long time to soften, and we're not fining or filtering anything, so we can't remove them that way. So time is our friend in that respect. So that table cider we sent you was probably the second fastest product we've ever brought to market, and that's 9 months after pressing the apples. So if you compare that with some of the big guys who press and ferment within a week.
Well, that's kind of that's my experience of the past, going to some of the major cider companies on a tour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, there's
this is a very different proposition.
It is, isn't it?
And we were lucky that when we started, it was a proof of concept thing, so we could afford to take time with it. And we had a bit of money, and we set it aside for this project. And if it worked, great. If it didn't work, well, okay, we've lost a bit of money, but it's not going to damage us.
So
Sorry.
And you are an official cider maker, Chief. You've got all the qualifications. You've been to cider school.
I've been to cider school, and there's a guy called Peter Mitchell who's taught like probably over half of the cider makers in the world.
Yeah.
I have to say that I don't do anything on the course. But the knowledge of what he was talking about has been very useful in informing the decisions that we make here as cider makers. But so officially trained. But a lot of it is pure instinct and intuition, and tapping into conversations that I've had in the past with winemakers as well.
Yeah. So how long does that process take then? I mean, is there an actual? I mean, is it like kind of Plumpton College type?
No, it's not. I mean, it's a very in-depth course, but there's a series of courses you can do, which are 3 or 5 day courses, and there's 3 of them on offer, and I've done 2 of them.
Okay. Right.
The other one was about bottling and packaging, which was less interesting.
So you can learn on the job, as it were. You can be doing it and learning at the same time, and
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, so in the States, inevitably, perhaps, you know, there is more course provision, but still not that much. And Peter Mitchell runs his courses over there. But in the same way that it hasn't been afforded perhaps the respect that it could have been, that would explain why there's very little sort of provision in local colleges or stuff. So in a way, if we can generate a little bit more pride, then people will want to get into this. If you know, back in the 18th century, probably definitely because we were at war with the French, you know, it was cider and perry that was on the table of nobility and royalty. And actually there's no reason why the really, you know, the good stuff shouldn't be. And I have to say it's really lovely. We've had real support from the mayor of Hereford and the next mayor and everything, and they've really seen the opportunity to they need to get behind it, because even in this county, people have yet to fully realise the potential. So you can imagine part of our job, or you could call it a mission or whatever, is to share the pride around here, so that people will understand why they need to pay for these products, so that we can, you know, get there. It's interesting.
I mean, it's kind of fascinating how, in a way, as a journalist, you know, you obviously, you know, committed yourself with under the Drink Britain, and obviously spent all that time traveling the country and talking to producers, you know, a long time ago. So I suppose you built up that knowledge bank and are now actually doing what you were writing about. You're actually, which is very rare for a journalist to actually do something like that.
And it's really funny now, sort of opening the tasting room, because all that time I was on imbibe, and now I'm actually doing it for ourselves, you know, the licensing and all of that. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to some Chateau Cider in the future.
Well,
you start your winery.
No, what about that? I think cider making sounds a bit more up my street, actually.
All right, okay. Well, you can come down and spend a couple of days.
You could spare me a barrel. That'd be nice.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, the barrels is really fun, and we haven't. I don't know how your timing is going, so you tell us. But so part of us growing was also being able to invest in some really lovely barrels. And so we're growing. So we have a great barrel maturation sort of program, don't we?
Yeah. We've always used barrels in a small way from the start, but we've invested in quite a lot of barrels, and we'll invest again this year in more barrels.
What kind of barrels do you buy?
We buy none of them are new, and that's partly because I think new oak could be a very aggressive thing in which to put a cider, which doesn't have quite the weight of wine, but we have bought Burgundy barrels, red wine barrels from Italy, but also a lot of spirit barrels as well. So cognac, bourbon, whiskey, rum.
And do they make a real? And you can really, obviously, you can tell the difference. You can really get a sense of what they do to the quality.
Yeah, every barrel is different, that's what everyone says, and it's true. But some of the barrels, the effects are really clear. Others is more subtle. But and that blend of them is really interesting.
It's I think in a way, it's not that we want to add that flavour into the cider, but it's the way it interweaves as it breathes all the way through.
I think there's definitely some pickup from the barrel, but there's the other micro oxygenation that occurs during maturation, which helps to soften tannins and stuff, is an important part of it as well. Yeah,
so fascinating. So is the idea, Susanna, are you going to carry on? Are you writing about this as well? You'll carry on doing?
I'm writing less and less. Because of putting time in here. But I have actually just been commissioned to do a lovely cider review for the Art of Eating magazine over in the States. So little opportunities like that. But we're doing various other things. I'm involved with the Three Counties Cider and Perry Association. I'm their comms person, oddly enough. James was chair of that for a couple of years, handed that one over. I set up, along with Elizabeth Pimlett, who's the director of the Museum of Cider, we set up Cider Women, a PAN group, not just for people in the industry, but for anyone who's interested. Gabe Cook, who I think you'll know, he and I masterminded Ciderlands last year, where we brought the world of cider in terms of the tourism professionals from over a dozen regions around the country. We brought them, the world, we brought them to the UK. So we're involved in kind of helping to raise the profile. We get invited to speak or whatever.
And there's a new cider campaign on its way, which you'll hear about in due course as well, that we're involved in.
Yes.
Are you involved in this? Is it Cider as Wine? Are you involved in that as well, or not? Alistair Morell does the Cider does it Cider as Wine, is it, the initiative?
Yes. Well, we're not, but we support what he's doing in that, good on Alistair. He's always talked to us, and we know all the producers that are in there. So Simon Day, one of our, if you like, mentors or inspirers, he's in, and Eleanor Leger, Eden Cider. We actually just think that cider isn't wine. We do have a wine press.
No, I know what he's saying, though.
Yeah.
He's trying to move the conversation away from these long, simple, sparkling sweet drinks to
of course, But actually, I mean, the differences from a point of view of shorthand to understand what you're doing, but in terms of actually what you're doing, it's a very specific skill and very, very specific to cider, isn't it? I mean, let's celebrate cider, for goodness sake. I mean,
exactly. But
it's great to see what he's doing, and it's great that there's more bodies like this, And
I mean, it's an astonishing difference between when we arrived here 6 years ago what was happening in the cider world to now. There's been a lot of change, and it's probably not obvious from the outside, but from the inside, it's like there's a lot of things going on now which are very exciting and just weren't happening at all.
And I love your packaging, by the way. Your little Pomona on your top there.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So, and who is little Pomona? Who is little Pomona?
Pomona is the goddess of fruitful abundance, the Roman goddess of fruitful abundance. And if you look up her story, which is in, I can't remember the book now. Anyway, she had an orchard essentially. Right. She guarded that orchard.
Ferociously.
Very ferociously, and then some dude seduced her by dressing up as an old lady. And the rest of history, of course. But so we wanted a character to embody the brand, so that seemed good. But Pomona in classical artwork is always depicted as this willowy blonde lady with little clothing on, so we couldn't do that, obviously. So we just made it a kind of feisty younger character. And,
it's great.
So
really, that is great. I mean, the packaging works. It's got a real nice, refreshing look and feel to it, as a cider does, you know.
That's what we tried to do. Yeah. And so recently we've been able to move her around, and other characters have joined in. So it's all got quite. It's been quite cool.
Two things. In the table cider, this other character comes from.
She lift up a bit. Lift up. Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah.
The other character. Is that initially root and branch?
Yeah, we do cider and keg as well, which was aimed at. And it's quite an innovative cider in that it's a live cider. We condition it in the keg, which very few people do.
James was the first to do this.
So that character, and the brand was called Root and Branch, and that was about a root and branch rethink of cider in pubs. So obviously COVID-19's kind of halted that project to a large extent. But this guy was the character on that label. So with table cider, which we sent to you, we brought the family of characters together on the label.
Yeah,
kind of celebrating that conviviality.
It's been great to not only create drink products, but to actually then, as you say, do all the packaging, the labeling, and give them a real character to them as well.
Yeah, it's been good fun.
It's been really good. James's sister happens to be a designer, so Sammy. So that's really, really useful. And then
she does quite a lot of work in the wine trade as well.
Yeah, she does actually. She's done most of Wines of Spain's tastings for the last 5-6 years.
She did stuff for Wines of Chile, and she did stuff for Wines of Argentina as well when I was there.
So she's very good at keeping us on track. And then so Blair from Canada, one of his very good friends is an artist. So Ariana, she's the one who's re-envisaged Pomona into sort of other settings. So it's kind of fun to move things on. You're right. So
no, I mean it's very important. You were talking about standing out from or making having a presence and creating that. So the branding has been a big help in that because people recognize it easily and they really like it. So, and cider was not like that 6 years ago. I mean, it's like, some of the labels were truly awful, but now you see some brilliant examples of packaging from the newer cider makers, which is exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And it helps give you an identity within those as well, which is.
It's been
so just sort of finally, just wrap it up. I mean, like, where next for you? I mean, in terms of what your plans. I mean, you've got a very large warehouse behind you there, so what are the plans to fill it up there? What's next?
We're planning to just. I think the capacity here is probably about 100,000 litres comfortably. We could probably squeeze in more. So over the next few years is to try and build up to that. And just maximise the capacity here. We already export ciders, and we want to do a bit more of that, as well as expanding distribution in the UK. We're always experimenting as well. So we're going to keep pushing the experimental nature of some of our production as well. So
we're really enjoying kind of working with some sommeliers. So Felix introduced us to Ellen Doggett, who's part-time sommelier now, but also
she works for
Roberson's as well. So, and whenever we can, we like to work with the chefs as well. Yeah. We've set up a cider club, so part of it will also be enabling others to come and see what's what, maybe volunteer with us a little bit, see what's going on. So there's fun things. And then this new campaign that James mentioned, you will get to hear about soon.
Okay.
And if that's all right, we'd like to brief you.
Of course, yeah, please do, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
That'll be kicking off in mid-August. And again, so actually, Jane Payton, who you may know, School of Booze, I'm not sure. Her and I, we coined the hashtag Rethink Cider about 18 months ago. And so it's kind of been adopted around the world. Everyone kind of uses it in different ways. Everywhere has different sort of things. But I think, you know, the fact that we've got a lovely chance to chat with you.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's really nice. And obviously we'd love to invite you.
Yeah, you must come.
No, absolutely. No, I must admit, you whetted my appetite with by actually tasting your cider. So yeah, very much.
Oh,
that's great.
So lovely.
So, well, are you still in South London? Is that where you're based, or have you moved?
Yeah. Still in South London. Yeah. So that's all. But yeah. No, I look forward to breaking out of my lockdown and coming over to.
One day, I hope so.
Sunny Hampshire.
That'd be very, very nice. Well,
it was really good talking to you. I mean, I must say, I'm really impressed by what you've done. I mean, I've been watching you from afar and picking up stuff on social media, but to actually really get to see you again and to hear the story, it's great. Really, really massively impressed, and it's great to see all those creative juices, James, coming to the fore.
Last, yeah.
I know.
Lunatic has finally taken over the asylum.
Best of luck with it all, definitely.
Very much indeed.
Nice to see you, Richard.
So
Take
much.
it easy.
Really lovely to talk to you.
See you for real at some point.
Yeah.
Absolutely, definitely.
Of course.
Brilliant.
Take care.
All right then, cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.